Started already. Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen wa ashabihi ajma'een. Welcome to another episode of the Maradia Show. I'm your host, Shadid Muhammad, where we are meeting people where they are. So we're going to continue our discussion. 10 ways to know, or 10 ways 10 ways to determine or to know whether or not you are ready for, not just ready for marriage, but even for those that are not Muslim, ready for, ready to be in a long-term relationship. So we need to have some tools by which we can engage whether or not we are actually ready for this. All right, because the tools that we have been using beforehand, pretty much, I'm ready to be in a marriage, I'm tired of being lonely. So those were, pretty much the gauges that, we were using beforehand. Okay, so alhamdulillah, welcome to another episode of the Maradia Show. Muhammad. And so, as I said, we will continue with our discussion on 10 ways to determine your readiness for marriage. For those of you who would like to join me on Zoom, you can join me by ID is 624. That is 624-674-33 on Zoom. So we are at number 4. We are at 4 from the things that we've discussed. We've discussed already. Number 1, your willingness to make sacrifices. You are not ready to be in a relationship with anyone. All right, because any relationship requires sacrifices. All right, so if you're not ready to make sacrifices, for the people, then that's not, you're not ready to be in a commitment. You're not ready to be in a committed marriage or relationship. Number 2 is that you have to be ready to be responsible. And being responsible, the Zoom number again is 624-674-3330. 624-674. If number 2 was to be responsible. If you are not ready to be responsible, then you are not ready to be in a marriage or any type of committed relationship. Responsible for the person's soul. You are responsible for the person's soul. You are responsible for their mental well-being. You are responsible for their physical needs. You are responsible for their mental needs. You are responsible for these things. And if you are not ready to be responsible with these 6 things, the wealth, the soul, the emotions of your spouse. If you are not ready to be responsible with these 6 things, then you are not ready to be in a marriage. You are not ready to be committed in any capacity. You are not ready to be committed in any capacity, because to be committed to something means that you are aware that there's a certain level of responsibility that comes with being in this situation. To someone in a relationship means that you are aware at the very beginning that being in this situation requires some level of responsibility. And that is something that we are missing big time in many of our relationships and many of our marriages. we are missing the sense of responsibility. People don't feel that they are responsible. People go into relationships, go into marriages with people, and it's just like, I'm just here to get from you what I can get from you. I'm not responsible for, your physical well-being. I'm not responsible for your soul. I'm not responsible for your mind, and I'm not responsible. And it doesn't mean that going into a relationship with someone, they are forcing you to be responsible. This is self accountability. This is self responsibility. This is you knowing that by making a commitment to this person, I am also being committed. I'm also committing myself to being responsible for them. All right. And in the Islamic community, we put a lot of emphasis on distance and things like that. Yeah, that's okay. But what about being responsible for their mental well-being, like not harming them, not, gaslighting them, not inflicting psychological trauma on them? You know what I mean? What about that type of, responsibility? That is, I would like to think that that is just as important as, being financially responsible for them. So responsibility, is broader than just providing for someone financially or providing, a home and giving birth to the person's child or children. That's your responsibilities are deeper than that. You are the soul, the religion, and the emotions of the person that you are in a relationship with. And if you are not ready to be responsible, then don't go into a marriage. Don't go into a commitment. Number three week is that number three was you have to be willing to accept your flaws. If you are not willing to accept your flaws, then you are not ready to be in a marriage. You're not ready to be in a committed relationship. When you go into a marriage with someone or a long term commitment with someone, the person is going to obviously trigger you. The flaws and mistakes being around you, right? They are going to trigger you in such a way where you're going to expose some of your weaknesses. Whether it is, whether it is insecurity, whether it's immaturity, whatever it is, they are going to expose that naturally because you are functioning in such close proximity with the person. It's inevitable, right? Inevitable that they are going to trigger you. They are going to expose some things. And if you are not ready to see those things about yourself, then you are not ready to be in a marriage because that's what living with someone is going to do. That's natural. Living with someone is going to allow them entry into some of your weakest points. It's going to give them access to some of your weakest. And when they hold the mirror up to you, you have to be willing to accept that. If you are not willing to accept that, then you are not ready to be in a marriage. What do you think that the person is going to continue to ignore all those things out? They're going to point those things out. How much can a person ignore? Right? How much can a person ignore? Yeah, we would love an ideal world. We would love nothing more than to see nothing but perfection in our spouses. But we're human, and there are things that trigger us, and there are things that we trigger within our spouses. And when, as the saying goes, don't ask me to apologize for holding up a mirror if you don't like what it's. If you don't ask me to apologize for holding up a mirror to you. If you don't like what you see in the mirror, then change it. Don't try to change me or try to shame me for holding up. You get people that say, well, I can't never do anything right. Everything I do is wrong in your. That's a deflection mechanism. That is what you use to deflect. Everything I do is wrong. No, 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 no. Not everything you do was wrong. What I am pointing out to you right now, to the everything, as we, proceed in our marriage, as we continue along in our journey, but don't exaggerate. Gross exaggeration is another way of deflecting. I'm going to deflect what you're saying by, over exaggerating. Tafkhim al-amr, as they say in Arabic. Tafkhim al-amr. You're going to, you fakhim al-amr. You're going to exaggerate the situation more than what it is. I'm not saying that obviously, everything you do is not wrong. Stop exaggerating. That's a gross exaggeration that you are using to deflect what I am saying to you right now. What I'm saying to you right now is this: stay on the topic, stay on the issue that we are addressing right now. Don't be a moving target. You know what I mean? Everything I do is wrong. Everything I do in your eyes is wrong. No, not everything. If everything you did was wrong, obviously I wouldn't even be married to you. But the thing that I'm pointing out to you right now is something that I would like you to take a look at, if you don't mind. It's something that I would like you to take a look at. And I mean, as uncomfortable as that may be, sometimes you got to stand in that discomfort. Life, you're perfect. People have been telling you all of your life that you are the bomb.com. Like, you know what I mean? Like, as corny as that sounds, like, people have been blowing smoke underneath your skirt, underneath your thobe for so long. In your own personal circles, you might be that girl or that guy within your own personal circle. You know what I mean? At work, you might be the CEO or the head, HNIC, you know what I mean, at your job. And sometimes we live vicariously through these titles that have been given to us. We in front of the people that love us, that don't want to hurt us, and tell us the things that we need to hear about ourselves. Your spouse does not see that. At work, you're the CEO, but when you come home to your spouse, they don't see you as that. And your spouse is going to tell you the things that are triggering them and things that are bothering them about you through who you are outside of the home, inside of the home. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Hey, I'm triggering this person, you know what I mean? Like, I'm making this person uncomfortable. I'm giving this person an unhealthy marital experience. And I need to fix me in order to fix this situation. And as difficult as that is, you got to stand in that. Stop deflecting. Stop being a moving target. Stop living vicariously through the title to you outside of, your home, your immediate family, So now we move on to number 4, from the signs to that show, or from the ways to determine you're willing to be. If you are not willing to be in a spousal role, then you are not ready for marriage. And that goes for both men and women. Let me separate. Let me separate the weak from the obsolete. Let me separate those who, are winners at the game of marriage, those who just want to settle for mediocrity. Let me settle this right now. If you are not willing to be in a spousal role, you are not ready for marriage. Go back into the playground, to the swings, go back to the playground and go find somebody to play games with you. If you are not ready to be, and you can come and philosophize, the whole institution of marriage. The institution of marriage has been around long before philosophy was. Aristotle, long before these great philosophers. Marriage has been around way before these people. So no matter what philosophy you come up with, it does not circumvent or negate the obligations that come along with and the responsibilities that come along with being in a marriage or committed relationship. You can philosophize all you want. That's antiquated. You know, these whole roles. I don't do the gender roles. I don't do. Well, then you're not ready for marriage. And please let me know how that's going to work out for you. That's going to work out for you one or two ways. Either you're a man and you're not ready, and men don't usually talk like that. Men don't usually. I mean, unless you a cuckold, you know what I mean? Unless you one of these men that just, that just placate the feelings of women, no matter the whims of women, not the feelings, placate the whims of women. The type of man that the Prophet ﷺ said, any man who keeps a woman under his auspices, under his authority, any man that keeps a woman under his responsibility, who is disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, lives life on her terms, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not accept his dua until he lets that woman go. You understand? That's a fact. Islam is not the type of religion that holding a dayuth, which is called in Arabic. As a matter of fact, the Prophet ﷺ said, a dayuth la yadkhul jannah, that the dayuth, the cuckold, will not enter into paradise. This is a man who assumes responsibility over a woman in a marriage, in a marital situation, and he allows the woman to the free range to, go and come as she pleases, to dress as she pleases, whoever she pleases, whomever she pleases, to go. She's a free spirit within the confines of marriage, which is a walking oxymoron. You're in the confines of a marriage, yet you are, you're a free bird, free to do you, right? She can go to lunch with, her male friends and, ride in the car with male friends. And some of you might be sitting here like, well, what's wrong with that? Well, there's a lot wrong with that. To men, to the type of man that Islam is trying to create. To the type of man that Islam is trying to create. See, when you come into the from whatever walk of life you come in. However, once you enter into the fold of Islam, there's a certain culture, code of ethics that is imposed on men and imposed on women. So that code of ethics, it correlates with where we come from, because Islam, I only came to perfect moral character, meaning the religion of Islam is aligned finitely with moral character. That the Prophet bring moral character. He said, I came to perfect moral character, meaning anything that was considered moral from a social or cultural standpoint outside of the bounds of religion, Islam already confirms that. Which is why if two people were married prior to Islam, they were Christians or whatever their religion was, and they were married prior to them converting to Islam, and then both of them, Islam already acknowledged their marriage. The Prophet ﷺ's daughter, Zainab, was a prime example of that. Zainab was married before the Prophet ﷺ became the Prophet. The Prophet, she was married prior to the Prophet ﷺ receiving revelation. And when the Prophet ﷺ emerged as a prophet, obviously his family gravitated towards that. They embraced it. Khadija, Fatima, all of his daughters, they all embraced him as a prophet. Did not accept Islam at the beginning. He did not accept Islam at the beginning. So they separated. They went their separate ways. They never divorced. They separated and went their separate ways. I gave a whole entire lecture about this. Years later, 3 years later, Zainab's husband converted to Islam, and the Prophet ﷺ told Zainab, So he never nullified their marriage. Their marriage from prior to Islam was still valid even after he converted to Islam. The Prophet ﷺ told Zainab, go home to your husband. You understand? So anything, and it aligns with the standards of morality that we have in our religion, Islam confirms that. And anything that is, morally accepted, with, God's, version of morality, then Islam rejects. It might be something that is accepted according to culture, but according to the culture that the spiritual culture that Islam is trying to create. Because Islam looks at the whole entire picture. The Sharia of Islam, the laws, the legislative laws of Islam, looks at the whole picture, holistically, of the human life. So while something may be accepted, while something may be accepted culturally, Islamically it's conflicting, right? As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَا تَنْكِحُوا مَا نَكَحَ آبَاؤُكُمْ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ. Do not marry those whom your fathers married from amongst the women. Took place before Islam. So what did Islam do? Islam made it haram for a man to marry a woman that his father was married to, and vice versa, for a man to marry a woman that his son. Arab culture, this was something that was acceptable. You understand? This is something that was acceptable according to pre-Islamic Arab cultural standards. Islamic Arabia, for a man to marry a woman, divorce her, and the son, if he decided to marry that woman, obviously not his mother, just another father was married to, if the young son decided to marry that woman years later, it was totally okay. Culturally, it was okay. And vice versa. It was okay culturally. However, when Islam comes, Islam says no. For a son to marry the ex-wife of his father, or for a father to marry the ex-wife of his son. Now, while that may be culturally acceptable to with the moral standard that Islam came to put in place. And there are tons of examples in the Quran like this. You understand? There are tons of examples in the Quran like this. All right? So the point that I'm making is that a man converts to Islam, and from whatever walk of life he converts to Islam from, once he converts to Islam, his morality has to be weighed against the standards of morality that Islam has dictated. And whatever conflicts with that, he has to change that with the standards of morality that Islam imposes. So, for example, Islam is totally against a man being, you know, a cuckold, and today we shame men for doing this by coming up or creating terms masculinity. You see how that works? So when you say a man is toxic or displaying masculine qualities or behaviors, he's toxic, and that's shamed in today's culture, and it is quickly spreading throughout the Muslim community. Because the more and more you shame men for being men, men are going to go where men are going to do one or two to change their masculinity. They're going to effeminize or allow society to effeminize themselves, which is why you go into a lot of these jobs like Starbucks, Target, a lot of these stores, and you still, like, in order to have a job in this day and time, especially for black men, because the masculinity, it has been deemed toxic even by his own woman. And that's the sad thing about it. Even black women are shaming black men for displaying any degree of masculinity. watered down to such a degree that even your woman doesn't feel threatened by you, doesn't feel challenged by you. And the same thing happens when we go into these workplaces where we have now in order to be non-threatening. Meanwhile, white men can walk into, a festival or carnival with a book bag on, strapped with an AK-47, and unload, his AK-47, and it's like, you gotta be kidding me. There is no masculinity that is more toxic than white male masculinity. That's a fact. Black male masculinity is not toxic. We're trying to hold on to whatever little bit of masculinity we have. There's no masculinity that is more masculinity. Hence the fact that, feminism started out to confront white male masculinity. Feminism didn't start with, black Muslim women and masculinity, phenomenon, this momentum that is gaining with this stuff. This stuff started long before you were even out of chains of slavery. Long had white women trying to confront and challenge the white male masculinity. So if we're going to talk about toxic masculinity, let's not shift the focus to African American men. Our masculinity sometimes, if we use the word toxic, if our masculinity gets to a point where it becomes aggressive, or it becomes, over assertive, it's a protection. It's a protection for us. You understand? That's our armor. That's our coat of mail. That's how we protect ourselves. Mean face. We got to work out and, make ourselves buff. That's our protection. Meanwhile, you got our women looking at us like, oh, you toxic. It's like, look. You want me to, I'm at 10, you want me to dumb myself down to 3 just so you don't feel threatened? But what about when I have to walk out into the world and I have to, protect my wife, I have to protect my children. Sometimes you're walking in a mall and, a white guy might be walking right towards you. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it's okay for other people to feel threatened because that's your protection. You can't imagine how many African American men have been spared, some white toxicity, how buff you look or the look on your face. You understand what I'm saying? Like we got that look on our face like, man, I wish you would. I stay anytime I walk out my door to anybody, but that's protection. You understand? So, it's important, man, that we don't run with these terms and Islam into the religion of Islam display some level of masculinity. They have to have some level of. You're talking about, Abu Dujana, who, they were lining up for war. They were lining up to go to war, and Abu Dujana is walking, down the aisle. Prepping the soldiers, at for war, and the war speech. The leader, the head, would give the war speech. Trying to get the adrenaline. And Abu Dujana is walking down the ranks, with his armor on, and he's walking with a real arrogance. And Umar radiallahu anhu says to him that you are walking, tamshi bi mishyatin yakrahahu Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala normally hates, but it is acceptable in this situation. You understand? You are walking with a walk that in a normal instance, Allah would hate it. And pride. But in this situation, it's warranted. It's warranted. You understand? This is Abu Dujana, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Umar, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And Umar was just as masculine as any man. And Umar says to the guy, you are walking with a walk that Allah dislikes, except in this situation. You are displaying of, strong male presence is warranted in this situation. You understand? Now you got these women, you walking around with your bonnets. You went from wearing a hijab, you went from wearing the hijab behind the ear, the Nation of Islam version of hijab, and then you put on the full hijab, and then to take over. What's next? You want to go dreadlocks and take the bonnet off, and you're just completely walking yourself out of Islam. You don't even realize it. You don't even realize it, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has led you astray. Allah says in the Quran, فَلَمَّا زَاغُوا أَزَاغَ اللَّهُ قُلُوبَهُم, that when they decided to go astray, Allah caused their hearts to go astray. Our women who, profess this whole toxic masculinity and feminize, Islam does not accept that. Islam, for the men, that. So if you want to be effeminate, you are going to run into conflict with. Maintains a woman that maintains obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah will not accept his dua until he lets that woman go, until he divorces her. Allah will not accept his dua. So this forces men to take some, allow women to decide for you to what degree you can be masculine. I'll be damned. You gotta be kidding me. I'll be damned. You have to be kidding me. That you as a man can say with your two lips that I am a man, yet you allow your wife, your woman to dictate to you to what degree. 7, that's toxic. No, you need to bring it down a little bit. Bring it down to 5, bring it down to 4. Okay, I'm comfortable. You can be masculine, comfortable with you at 3 or 4. You're going to run into a conflict. Islam doesn't accept that, man. Islam doesn't accept that. You're going to run into problems. I can give you a whole rundown of shame the man for not being a man, what would be deemed or considered toxic masculinity. But in order for you to decide that you are ready to be in a marriage, you have to be willing to accept a role. Marriage, the institution of marriage, comes with a role for both husband and wife. It comes with that. Now, to what degree does that role apply to you? Everybody's situation is different. But there are roles. And to completely dismiss that altogether under the guise of liberation from spousal roles and, this new age, this new, phenomenon of, men and women can go into relationships and it doesn't go along. Marriage, I believe, by religion, marriage is a that was designed by God. I believe that. I don't marry. I believe that marriage was something that was. I believe that. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded marriage or dictated or ordained marriage on human beings, he also legislated with that institution of marriage and all of the workings that come along with the institution. That's my belief. I don't know whether you are following, but anyone who studies the Quran and the Sunnah would arrive at the same, understanding that I have. I'm sure. So if you are if you're not ready to be in a spousal role, then you are not ready to be married. You're in a relationship. relationship, because those close relationships like marriage and long-term relationships, they require people to take a certain role. That role could change depending on time, depending on circumstances, but there are roles. There are roles. The institution of marriage in Islam comes with a set of roles for. Let me give you the Islamic context. Let me give you the Islamic context for this. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned in an authentic hadith, "Kullukum ra'in wa kullukum mas'ulun an." You are responsible for your flock. So there comes a responsibility, something, a set of guidelines that you are responsible for. That's what a role is. That's what a role. To an institution, you assume a certain responsibility. That responsibility comes with a certain level of responsibility, obligations that you have to abide by, you have to adhere to. And I'm amazed at Muslims who say, I don't agree with the role, the whole role, but yet you go take a job and you got a role to do at your job. I'm just doing that for worldly purposes. This is something, that may possibly get you into paradise. Some people are not good at things. Some people are not good at many of the rituals of Islam, but you're a damn good wife. You're a damn good husband. You handle your role with 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 yourself as a husband or as a wife. You might get the Jannah just simply on the way that you handle yourself within the institution of marriage. Maybe you don't make a lot of extra prayers. Maybe you don't do a lot of extra fasting. Maybe you don't do a lot of that stuff. But you're a damn good wife. You're a damn good husband. And everything you do within that capacity added to your scales of hasanat. Absolutely. Inna Allah la yudayyi'u ajra al-muhsinin. That Allah will not cause the reward of the good doers to be, wasted or neglected. Allah is still going to reward you. You're going to be rewarded. But I'm amazed at a person who takes a job, a Muslim, who says, all that role stuff in marriages, I don't agree with all of that. I think people can kind of figure it out in their, and you say, I don't, I'm not accepting this on the job training, this whole, role and responsibilities that I have. I think people should just be able to figure it out as they go along. Do you say that when you get hired at a job? For dunya purposes, obviously. Do you say that when you go to get a job? Do you go into your job, your first day on the job, and you say, well, people coming into the job should just be able to assume, their rightful position in the job, because of their personal experience, and have to be, binded by this code of ethics and responsibility, to be binded by that. Do you say that when you go into your job, or do you take the even at your own dissatisfaction? You don't want the worker role. You don't want the entry level position. Yet, that's what you qualify for. That's what they handed you. You take it gracefully. You take it in gratitude. You walk into a job and they tell you, you got to mop the floors and you got to do this. That's your role. You don't walk in and say, well, I think we should be able to just tweak it as we go along. It's just complete hypocrisy, man. It's just complete hypocrisy, man, honestly. And where we as Muslims have to separate, you know, those who adhere to Islam, and those who accept and embrace Islam from those who don't. Learn, you know what I'm saying? Right. You got to follow the policies and procedures of the job. You got to follow your job description, right? They give you a job description. You got to sign off on a packet after you read the whole job description and you say, okay, you sign off. Yeah, I'll take this role. I'll take this position. because somebody is writing a check for you. But yet God tells you, if you want the institution of marriage, these are the roles and responsibilities in your marriage. And we say, nah, I don't agree with that. You don't agree with God, mashallah. All you intelligent PhD, master's degree, you're going to think yourself right on out of the fold of Islam. I keep saying that. And the more and more you look out into the Muslim world, it is really sad, man. It is really sad what we have done to this beautiful religion, man. And all of the, all of what Islam entails, man. Just on the strength of and how politically correct we want to be and how socially accepted we want to be. You know what I'm saying? And we'll begin to, chip away at the religion, as the Prophet ﷺ said, Hadika, Yahdika Deen, shaving off our religion bit by bit by bit, until there is nothing left. Until there is nothing left of our deen. Nothing. SubhanAllah, man. And non-Muslims don't even have to do it anymore. Muslims, we're doing the most damage. Non-Muslims just got the ball rolling with the Islamophobia. And now, because Muslims, let me say this, Muslims are more Islamophobic than non-Muslims. That's than non-Muslims. We are scared of Islam. We are afraid of Islam, which is why we keep tweaking the religion and turning the religion and, coming up with different ways to interpret the religion. We are more Islamophobic than non-Muslims will ever be. Non-Muslims are not afraid of Islam. Muslims are afraid of Islam. Look at how far we've distanced ourselves from Islam. Muslims won't even give you the salams in public. You say salamu alaikum, you are enthusiastic. You see a brother in the mall, you see somebody, salamu alaikum. Alaikum salam. What are you afraid of? What are you embarrassed about? You get one brother who's working on a job. Nobody in the job knew they was Muslim. Y'all come from the same neighborhood, so you know the person's Muslim. When you grew up with them, you know they're Muslim. So you start working. Hey, salam alaikum. And they're like, alaikum salam, because nobody in the job knew they were Muslims. And now you about to put them on Front Street. And believe it or not, these same people are the ones that will get you fired. They exposed to everybody else in their circle that they are actually Muslim. They worked so many years at that job trying to fit in, trying to shed their Islamic identity, and here you come blowing their spot up. And they'll get you fired for that. I've seen that joint with my own eyes. They'll get you fired for that. All you're doing is trying to engage them as they say they are. You say you're Muslim, I'm just going to engage you as a Muslim. But you spent so much of your time trying to prove to your peers, your co-workers, your colleagues that you don't have anything to do with Islam. And then here come this guy, here come this sister blowing your spot up in front of everybody. We are more Islamophobic as Muslims than non-Muslims. We are afraid of Islam. But we superimpose that on non-Muslims under the guise. In fact, you are afraid of Islam. But you are hiding under the Islamophobic rhetoric and using that as, your launch pad to, enact all of these different policies. Muslim politicians, y'all, they are more Islamophobic than the people that they claim are Islamophobic. When the last time you seen a Muslim politician at the masjid praying for Fajr? A full beard, following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. When the last time you seen that? Please tell me. Anyway, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Kullukum ra'in wa kullukum mas'ulun ar ra'iyatihi." All of you are shepherds, and all of you are responsible for your flock. And then he goes in to explain, each and every role. And he said, الرجل راع ومسؤول عن أهل بيته. He said, a man is a shepherd and he is responsible for his household. A man is a have that conversation. I'll let y'all bask in your ignorance, man. Y'all not ready to have that conversation, man. Those are the conversations that we need to have. Everybody hiding under this umbrella of Islamophobic rhetoric than anybody. You are more afraid of Islam than anybody. You have Muslim politicians, council men and women dancing in the street with homosexuals, dancing in the street celebrating gay pride, and we're not Islamophobic. I would like to think that we would stand on principle and say your life, but I don't have to agree with that. I can respectfully disagree with your lifestyle, and I don't have to be out in the streets dancing with you. However, I wouldn't let somebody just randomly attack you. But I don't have to dance in the street with you to prove to you that I am, pro-life, or I'm, pro-humanity. You understand what I'm saying? You are more Islamophobic than the people you are claiming are Islamophobic. Many non-Muslims don't give a damn one way or another what type of religion you practice. But we are so careful to cross our I's, dot our T's, not do this, not do that. I don't want to offend nobody. I don't want to do this. Why are you afraid of Islam? Why are you afraid of Islam? Which is what the Prophet, what Umar said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, "Alasna al haq wa aduwana al batil." He said, "Aren't we the ones that's on the truth, and our enemies are the ones that are on falsehood? Aren't we the ones that are on the falsehood?" Umar, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Bala, of course." Then Umar said, "فَلِمَاذَا يعني al-ikhtifa? Why are we hiding then? What are we afraid of? Why are we the ones that are afraid? Why are we hiding?" You know what I mean? It just made sense to Umar. He just couldn't understand, why is it that we are the ones that are on the truth and our enemies are the ones that are on falsehood, yet we're the ones that are hiding. We are the ones that are afraid. So Prophet ﷺ said, "الرجل راع ومسؤول عن أهل," and responsible for his household. That's a responsibility. That's a role. That's a role. Married, but you're not ready to pay bills. You're not ready to use your paycheck to satisfy all of the financial responsibilities that lie on your shoulders. If you are ready to get married and you're ready to be responsible for, the family, children from, a previous relationship, or children that you brought into the world with that woman, if you are not ready for that role, if you are not ready to be responsible basis, if you are not ready to be responsible by not sliding into the DM of somebody else or some other woman, marriage comes with a responsibility or with a role. You understand? Marriage comes with a role and obligations. If you are not ready for that, then go back to the playground and continue playing. Don't put your feet in those shoes. It's not your size yet. Guys who convert to Islam, and the fact of the matter is that if you wasn't Muslim, marriage would have been the furthest thing from your mind. You convert to Islam, and now all of a sudden you become ready for marriage. How are you ready for marriage? I'm curious, because you're ready to have sex. That's the indication that you're ready for marriage. Because I'm Muslim now, and now I qualify to marry one of the Muslim women, so that automatically makes me ready for marriage. There's no prep put into it. No marriage. I had a guy post on my Facebook page the other day, when I posted a clip saying, um, your information from. We should get married the moment we're ready to get married and save ourselves from that. The same rhetoric, man. Rhetoric. So when you are ready to save yourself from the hellfire, when you are ready to do this and to do that, you are ready for marriage. MashaAllah. You are ready for marriage. No prep. No prep is put into that whatsoever. MashaAllah. I'm like, if this is Islam that, you guys want, Allah Azim, I'll just keep mine to myself. I'll crawl, me and my family, we'll take, as the Prophet ﷺ said, we'll take our sheep and our cattle and we'll go up to the mountains somewhere and just completely disappear. Because sometimes I really feel like a stranger amongst the Muslims. Sometimes the Muslims literally have me asking myself questions. Am I crazy? Am I the only one that is seeing this? You know what I mean? Like, literally crazy, man. The ideas, the thoughts. And I mean, anyway. He said, وَمَسْئُولَةٌ عَنْ بَيْتِ زَوْجِهَا وَأَوْلَادِهَا وَأَوْلَادِهِ وَوَلَدِهِ وَمَالِهِ, that the woman is a ra'iyah, is a shepherd, and she is responsible for her husband's home, responsible for his kids, responsible for his wealth, responsible for all of these things. The woman is a ra'iyah. She is a shepherd and she's responsible, meaning she has a role to play. She has certain responsibilities that come with her. You're ready to be somebody's wife is the moment that you accept a role that is coming along with that marriage, that position. You don't get to just call yourself a wife. You don't get to just call yourself a wife without validating that term wife by fulfilling those responsibilities that come along with the term wife. You guys following me? The term wife comes with a certain set of responsibilities that validate. You understand? You can't just come into marriage and do any of the things that validate that term wife. You guys follow me? Like, you don't get to do that. We want the title, but we don't want the responsibility. As a matter of fact, we create our own responsibilities. We tweak it as we go along, and then we wonder why many of our marriages are dysfunctional. So this whole idea of contributed by and large to a lot of the dysfunction that we see in many of our marriages. Many of the marriages that we see, the relationships that we find ourselves in, are dysfunctional, sometimes from top to bottom, from A to Z. Because we have liberated ourselves from this whole antiquated idea of spousal roles. We are essentially trying to take an institution that was created by Allah, create our own rules to it based upon our desires, based upon societal dictates, based upon cultural, traditions that are clearly going against the rules and regulations and guidelines that God has put in place. And it's clearly not working for us, and I don't understand. And then we turn around and wonder, I don't understand why we can't see the root of our problems. Why we can't see the root of our problems. You're trying to tweak it to make it work the way you want it to work. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, أهواءهم لفسد ما في السماوات وما في الأرض or لفسدت السماوات ومن فيهن, that if the truth was in accordance with man's desires, everything corrupted would have been rendered dysfunctional. Things that God institutes are not supposed to be ran by man's desires. It's supposed to be carried out and exercised the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended it for it to be. We come along and we say, nope, I don't agree with all this role stuff. I'm going to come in and I'm going to do my thing. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Let me share a hadith with you before I end. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned a hadith that was graded Hasan. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Inna Allah farada fara'id fala tudayyuha." That Allah has obligated responsibilities or obligations. فَلَا تُضَيِّعُوهَا يعني لا تتركوها. Don't abandon them. Don't abandon them. Allah has obligated certain obligations. فَلَا تُضَيِّعُوهَا. Don't neglect them. وَحَدَّ حُدُودًا فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا. And He has set certain boundaries. Don't cross them. Don't transgress them. وَحَرَّمَ أَشْيَاءً. Things haram. Don't engage in them. Don't fall into them. وسكت عن أشياء رحمة لكم غير نسيان فلا تبحثوا عنها. And he said that he has been silent about certain things, not out of forgetfulness, but as a mercy to you, that certain things have been just left alone. Gray area stuff. Don't touch it. He said, فلا تبحثوا عنها. Don't go in search of it. Don't go in search of it. You have people asking, you know what I mean? Like, you have this politician, Rashida Tlaib or Talib or something like that. She said, you know, Allah to her is a female. Allah is a she. None of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een ever asked whether or not Allah is a male or female. These are things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remains silent about. فَلَا تَبْحَثُوا عَنْهَا. So don't go in search of those things. None of the Sahaba ever asked whether or not Allah was a male or female. You got this so-called Muslim politician who say Allah to her, to her is a female, is a she. God to me is she. MashaAllah. You have allowed your feminism to, you know, that's toxic femininity. Toxic femininity. You can quote me on that. Come for me. I'm prepared. Trust me. Come for me. I'm good on my end. Come for me. I dare you. That's toxic femininity. Allah is a she. MashaAllah. So everything in your life, because of your feminism, you see, they should be females too. MashaAllah. Tabarakallah. And she's a Muslim politician. In my heart of hearts and my belief, I don't believe these people are Muslim. I'm just being honest with you. I'm not making takfir, but what people utter out of their mouths, as Umar radiallahu anhu, he said that when revelation was coming down, it exposed people. He said, but now revelation has stopped. And so we only deal with people out of dhahir, based upon what they show to us. فَمَنْ أَظْهَرَ لَنَا خَيْرًا نُعَامِلُهُ بِالْخَيْرِ. So whoever shows and displays to us good, meaning they show us the good of Islam, then we deal with them accordingly. وَمَنْ أَظْهَرَ لَنَا شَرًّا فَنُعَامِلُهُ بِالشَّرِّ. And whoever displays accordingly. You see people for who they are. When a person tells you who they are, believe them. Don't flip it on me and say, oh, you're making takfir, or we don't know what's in the person's heart. I'm not judging what's in the person's heart, nor is it our responsibility to judge what's in the person's heart. We leave we leave what is internal to God. That's not my place. But when you show outwardly your statements, your actions conflict with Islam, I have no other choice other than to. But you still hide under the umbrella of Muslim. I'm sorry, it doesn't work like that. I don't care what's in your heart. I don't have nothing to do with what's in your heart. I'm not judging what's in a person's heart. I'm judging the actions that conflict with Islam. None of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in ever asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam what gender was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. None of them. None of the Sahaba ever asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam what gender was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they asked him many things in the Quran. So وسكت عن أشياء رحمة لكم غير نسيانا فلا تبحثوا عنها, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remains silent about certain things, not out of forgetfulness, but out of a mercy for you. So don't go and seek, don't go out in search of knowledge about it, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't mention it for a reason. Arguing about whether Allah is in a place, right? If you have all of these just frivolous arguments. Is Allah contained within a space, or he's not contained within a space? Is Allah here on earth, male or female? La ilaha illallah. We sound like Bani Israel. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Bani Israel to slaughter the cow, right, the calf, which is, the story of Surah Al-Kahf. When Allah commanded Bani Israel to slaughter the calf, they say, ma lawnuha, what color should it be? Should it be male or female? Should it be? That's exactly how we sound today as Muslims. We think we sound academic. And the only reason the books of the scholars of Aqidah is saturated with a lot of these philosophical arguments, they were living in a time where they had to address those things. Ali radiallahu anhu, he said, al-ilm nuqta. Al-ilm nuqta. Katharaha al-jahilun. That knowledge is one point. Very simple. Very simplistic in its nature. Knowledge is very simple. Katharaha al-jahilun. That the ignoramuses unnecessarily expansive, unnecessarily, vast. Because every time an ignorant person, someone that has knowledge, has to come back, has to correct him, has to put forth the argument that corrects him, and has to, make sure that argument, never pops up again, has supplied the argument with all of the necessary dalil, adillah, evidences and proofs that it was needed. Otherwise, if he had never opened his mouth, it would have never been a need for a scholar to write a book on it. And in point, katharaha al-jahilun, ignorant people have vast and expansive. It's not that simple. It's not that difficult. You understand? So now you have Muslims arguing and debating on social media about whether Allah is contained in a place and whether he's contained in a space. And the thing about it is contained in a place or space or not. That's the question. Does it affect the way that you serve him? Subhanahu wa ta'ala is male or female. I'm just saying hypothetically for the sake of that argument. I believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the male masculine pronoun without attributing masculine pronoun. Huwa, kul huwa Allahu ahad. He did not say kul hi Allahu ahad. He said kul huwa. Huwa is a pronoun in the Arabic language that refers to masculinity. It's a masculine pronoun. The pronouns in the Arabic language are broken down into masculine and feminine. And sometimes before this whole masculine and feminine of gender was applied to pronouns never pointed to gender to begin with. Because all Semitic languages are broken down into masculine, feminine particles. Anything about language. Gender was not associated with that from the beginning. That's a new phenomenon. The point that I'm making is that whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a male or a female, does it affect your worship? Does it mean that you're going to worship him more because he's a female and worship him less because he's a male? Or is he still the same God Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we serve and that we worship. And no matter how much we put forth our best efforts, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can never be worshipped the way that he deserves to be worshipped, subhanahu wa ta'ala. We say in the morning adhkar, Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, adada khalqihi, wa rida nafsihi, wa zinata arshihi, wa midad kalimatihi. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi. Glory be to Allah. Praise be to Allah, and may he be glorified and praised. Adada khalqihi, the amount of his creation. And we're not talking about just talking about jinn, talking about angels, all forms of Allah's creation, that Allah deserves to be praised, the amount of his creation. Adada khalqihi. Wa rida nafsihi, and he deserves to be praised and glorified, the himself, that he is pleased with himself. Wa rida nafsihi, wa zinata arshihi, and he deserves the weight of our praise and our gratitude and our worship. His throne, which is the biggest thing in his creation, the heaviest thing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. None of our worship will ever Ta'ala's throne. Wazinata arshihi wa midad kalimati, and to the extent of his words. I mean, that dua, I cannot even do justice in this amount of time and trying to. From the adhkar as-sabah. This is something that we say every morning when we wake up. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, adada khalqihi, wa rida nafsihi, wa zinata arshihi, wa midad kalimatihi. Arabic, you understand this dua, you know that we could never, in our best moment of servitude, we could never serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way he deserves to be served. So why in the world are we sitting here having philosophical debates about where Allah is, where he isn't, whether he's male or female? Does it change the fact that you are still deficient at your best? Does it change? Does it change the fact that you are still deficient at your best when you serve him and you worship him, subhanahu wa ta'ala? So the point that I'm making is that the Prophet ﷺ said that إِنَّ اللَّهَ فَرَضَ فَرَائِدْ فَلَا تُضَيِّعُوهَا, that Allah has obligated obligations, don't neglect them. When we go into a marriage, there are certain roles, there are certain responsibilities that come along with that. Don't neglect those. If you want success in your marriage, then you have to do it. You have to follow the blueprint exactly the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended for you to do. You can't come in and, make it up as you go along. It's not going to work. Please tell me one marriage that has worked and has remained healthy, has managed to, people in the marriages are thriving, and they have totally circumvented, the command guidelines that has been, obligated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't think so. I don't think so. Ready to be in a role, go back to the playground and finish playing. When you are ready to accept a role that comes with you walking into the institution of marriage, just like you are ready to start your job, then you are ready. If your manager says, here, this is your job description, take a look over it, sign it, and let me know when you're ready. You take a look over your job description, you see that this is the role that this job accepts from you, and you sign your name, you are ready to work. You're ready to work. You look at the marriage and you say, hey, this is what is expected of me, right? There's a hadith where a woman came to the Prophet ﷺ, authentic hadith. Woman came to the Prophet ﷺ, she said, Ya Rasulullah, la haqqi ahadina alayha. What is the right of the husband of one of us over us? This is a woman asking the Prophet ﷺ about the rights of the husband over her. That if one woman gets married, what obligation institution of marriage? And the Prophet ﷺ began running down to her responsibilities to, not leave out of his home without his explanations to them. They all have context, right? Text without context only leads to confusion. All right? Understand. Every word that the Prophet ﷺ, nothing is self-explanatory. Nothing. Scholars have spent generations explaining these ahadith in detail, sitting with these narrations for years, for generations, hundreds of years. Hadith being passed on from one generation to the next of scholars that come along and look at all of what has preceded and all of the time that they're living in, and to explain the words of the Prophet ﷺ in a manner that is clear. And today we have people who just pick up the English version of Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, and off you go. Off you go explaining what you think it meant. And if I preceded you in that, man sabaqaka fi hada, who preceded you in? You couldn't give me one scholar. And as one of the scholars said to one of the Salaf said to another at a time, he said, "Don't ever hold the you in it." A legitimate scholar, obviously. I'm not talking about some homegrown imam from around the corner. I'm talking about a legitimate scholar who preceded you in that position. Don't ever take a position in Islam, especially in a matter of aqidah, especially, but in any matter regarding the religion, don't ever go back and look what other scholar has taken that same position that you have, whether past or present, whether contemporary or, in I forgot the point that I was making. My point is that if you are not ready to be in a role, then you're not ready to be married. Go back and, going back to the hadith, right? One of our husbands over her. And notice she's asking about the right of the husband over her. She's not asking about her right over her husband. She's asking about the right of the husband over her, because what is to give you is what you are obligated to give the other person. That is what is more important, because that is what you are responsible for. So this whole idea, he not giving her her rights because she's not giving me my rights. There's no tit for tat when it comes to that, because these are obligations. Obligated to give them their right, because then that would make you just as sinful as they are. It would not make any sense. As one of the scholars of the past, he said that I can't compensate someone who decides to disobey Allah concerning me except to obey Allah concerning him. That meaning, if you decide that you're not going to give me my right, if you decide to do that, I will do nothing more than obey Allah concerning your right. I'm not going to follow you down that path. You're difficult that is, because it is very difficult to give someone a right that is completely negligent and heedless of your rights. It's hard to do that, but no one said obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was easy. Obeying convenience. Sometimes it's going to be at your inconvenience. Many times it's going to be at your inconvenience. So after the Prophet ﷺ explains to her the rights of the husband over her, she turns and she says, if that is the right of the husband over the wife, I will never give a man authority over me. She refused to get married. Why? Because she wants to give a man that type of authority over me. I'm not in a place to do that. And this is what separates the Sahaba from us. We want, but we don't want the responsibility. And we'll go head first into a situation knowing that the situation is above us, but I'm going to, enjoy it for as much as if this is the right of the husband over me, I will never give a man authority over me. Meaning, where I'm at in my life right now, I am not prepared to give a man that much authority over me. That I gotta ask his permission before I leave his home. I can't bring anybody into the home without seeking his permission. You know what I mean? a man that level of authority over me. I'm not ready for that. And she refused to get married. Matter of fact, the hadith explains that the father went back to the Prophet ﷺ and told him that his daughter doesn't, and this was the same woman, his daughter doesn't want to get married. And the Prophet ﷺ said, leave her. Don't. If she realizes that marriage, the responsibility, has the ability to offer at that moment, then don't superimpose that on her. So what I'm saying is that marriage does come with roles. And if you are not ready to be in a role, you're not ready to be responsible, then don't get married. Take a break, take a sabbatical, take a hiatus, from marriage, and get your priorities in order, and first, before you decide that you want to jump into this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Inshallah, I'll open up for questions and answers. Periscope, I'll cut you off and cut you back on.